I discovered my husband was lying, so I taught him and his mother a lesson they'd never forget. I always believed that love, loyalty, and fairness were the most important parts of a marriage. When two people decide to build a life together, honesty should be the foundation of their relationship. That is why, for 2 years, I handed over half of the rent without hesitation, trusting my husband completely. I never questioned anything because I believed that marriage was about sharing responsibilities and working together as a team, but I was wrong. Jeremy, the man I loved and trusted, had been deceiving me from the very beginning. And it was not just him. His mother, Lorrie, was involved too. For 2 years, they had been taking my money, making me believe that we were simply splitting the rent as any normal couple would. In reality, they owned the apartment, and my share of the rent was nothing more than extra income for them. They had stolen thousands of dollars from me without any guilt or second thoughts. They had allowed me to work long hours and sacrifice my time and energy while they took advantage of my trust. The betrayal was more than just financial. It was emotional. I was not going to let this injustice go unanswered. If they thought they could use me and walk away without facing any consequences, they were wrong. Because betrayal does not just hurt, it creates something much more powerful. And I was determined to make sure they never forgot what they had done to me. Jeremy and I met when we were in college. He was a charming and funny person, always knowing how to make people laugh and feel special. When I was with him, I felt like the most important person in the world. We started dating in our final year of college, and our relationship grew quickly. Within 2 years, we got married, believing we had a strong foundation built on love and trust. We were not rich, but we had dreams for our future. Jeremy worked in marketing, while I was a nurse, often working long shifts at the hospital. Our incomes were not high, but we managed our expenses wisely and made things work. From the beginning, we had agreed that everything in our marriage would be shared equally. We promised to split all expenses 50-50, making sure that neither of us carried a greater burden than the other. When it was time to find an apartment, I trusted Jeremy completely. He was the one who took the lead in searching for a place, saying he wanted to find us a home that suited both of us. One afternoon, he called me, his voice filled with excitement. "You have to see this apartment," he said eagerly. "It's absolutely perfect for us." I could hear the happiness in his tone, and it made me smile. "Perfect in what way?" I asked, curious about what had made him so enthusiastic. "It has everything we need: 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and the balcony you always wanted," he replied. "And the best part? It's only $2,000 a month, which is a great deal for this area." Later that day, he took me to see the apartment, and I instantly fell in love with it. The space was just right, and the location was convenient. And price also seemed reasonable, considering what we were getting. Without any hesitation, we agreed that we would split the rent, $1,000 each, just as we had planned from the start. It felt like a big step forward in our lives, a place where we could create memories together. Everything appeared to be in order. The lease looked real, the payment process seemed normal, and there was even a landlord's name listed on the documents. There were no signs that anything was wrong, but I should have looked closer. I should have asked more questions. Because what I did not know was that this apartment was never meant to be rented. The person I loved and trusted the most was keeping a secret from me, one that would change everything. For 2 years, life went on as usual. I worked long and tiring shifts at the hospital, often returning home completely exhausted. Most nights, I barely had the energy to eat dinner before falling asleep. Jeremy handled the rent payments, and I never thought twice about handing him my share of the money at the end of each month. It was just another routine part of our marriage, something I trusted him to take care of. I had no reason to suspect anything. Then one evening in December, everything changed. That night, after a grueling 12-hour shift, I stepped into the elevator of our apartment building, my body aching from exhaustion. Just as the doors were closing, my neighbor Taylor hurried in, smiling brightly as always. "Hey!" she greeted me cheerfully. Then, after a moment, she tilted her head and studied me. "Oh, I know you. You live in Lorrie and Jeremy's apartment, right?" Her words hit me in an unexpected way, making me pause. "Lorrie?" I asked, confused. "Yeah, Jeremy's mom," she said casually. "She and her son bought that place years ago when the building first opened. Such a smart investment. She was always talking about it at the building meetings." I felt a sudden wave of dizziness. "Building meetings?" I repeated, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Taylor nodded. "Oh yeah, she never missed one. She was on the building board and always talked about property values. She and Jeremy bought the apartment a long time ago. Then Jeremy moved in with his ex before you. I guess things didn't work out between them, and then you moved in." My stomach twisted into knots. "His ex lived there too?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Taylor's smile slowly faded. "Oh, you didn't know?" She hesitated before adding, "I just assumed you did. Lorrie always talks about how well the arrangement works, having family manage the property. I mean, she's very proud of it." The elevator doors opened with a quiet ding, but I couldn't move. My feet felt frozen to the floor. Jeremy and his mother owned the apartment? For 2 years, I had been handing over half of the rent money every month, believing I was paying my fair share. In reality, I had been unknowingly giving my hard-earned money, $24,000 in total, to my own husband and his mother. There was no landlord, no rental agreement. The entire thing had been a lie. The realization hit me like a crashing wave. My husband had faked everything: the lease, the payment process, the entire arrangement, and the worst part? He had been splitting the money with his mother all along. I stepped out of the elevator in a daze, my hands trembling as I made my way to our apartment. My mind was racing, trying to process the betrayal. The trust I had in my husband, the belief that we were building a future together, had been shattered. In an instant, I felt sick. And then, a new emotion took over: rage. That night, after discovering the truth in the elevator, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, my chest tight with anger and disbelief. I needed proof. If I was going to confront Jeremy, I had to be sure. So I spent the entire night digging through public records. It didn't take long to find exactly what I was looking for. The property deed was right there in plain sight, listed under both Jeremy's and his mother's names. The documents showed that they had purchased the apartment years ago, long before I moved in. There was no landlord. There had never been one. Every dollar I had given Jeremy for rent had gone straight into their pockets. I had unknowingly been helping them pay off their mortgage, treating them as landlords when, in reality, they had tricked me into funding their investment. The betrayal stung even more as I thought back to all the times I had worried about money. I had skipped vacations, worked overtime, and cut back on things I loved to make sure I could cover my share of the rent. Meanwhile, Jeremy and his mother had been sitting back watching me struggle, all while taking my money without a second thought. I felt sick. But more than that, I felt angry. They had stolen from me. They had lied to me. They had made me believe I was an equal partner in this marriage when, in reality, I had been nothing more than a source of income for them. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Once my rage settled into cold determination, I began planning my revenge. Jeremy and his mother had played their little game for 2 years, but now it was my turn. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to make sure they felt the consequences of what they had done to me. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the perfect wife. I smiled when Jeremy made jokes. I laughed at his stories. I cooked his favorite meals. I even acted extra sweet to Lorrie when we visited her for dinner. I made her favorite butterscotch pie, something she always raved about, and acted as if nothing was wrong. During dinner, I casually brought up work. I have some exciting news, I said, keeping my tone light and cheerful. I might be getting a huge bonus soon. It's not confirmed yet, but my boss hinted at it last week. Lorrie's eyes lit up with interest. Oh, that's wonderful, dear, she said, glancing at Jeremy. Jeremy squeezed my hand under the table. That's amazing, babe. We should put that money aside for something big. I nodded, pretending to agree. I wanted them to believe that I had no idea what they had done. I wanted them to think that I was still their fool, that I still trusted them completely. The next day, I handed Jeremy my rent money as usual. I placed the cash in his hands, looking him straight in the eye, pretending like everything was normal. He had no idea what was coming. Then, on December 28th, I made my move. The morning of December 28th arrived, and everything was set in motion. I had planned every detail carefully, making sure that nothing could go wrong. Jeremy got ready for work, as usual, completely unaware that this would be the last morning he would ever wake up in our shared apartment with me. He poured himself a cup of coffee, the one he always insisted tasted better when brewed in my coffee maker. He took a long sip, scrolling through his phone before grabbing his bag. "Love you, babe," he said casually, as if everything was normal. I smiled sweetly, holding back the satisfaction bubbling inside me. "Love you too, honey," I replied. Then, just as he reached the door, I called out to him. "Oh, and Jeremy?" He turned around, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah?" I tilted my head slightly, my voice calm but firm. "You really should have married an idiot." His face scrunched in confusion. "What?" I kept my expression light and cheerful. "Nothing," I said in a sing-song voice. "Have a great day." Still frowning slightly, he shrugged and walked out, closing the door behind him. The second I heard his car pull out of the driveway, I sprang into action. I wasted no time. I grabbed the boxes I had secretly been packing over the last few days and started loading them up. Every single thing that belonged to me. Clothes, shoes, books, personal items. I packed it all. The furniture I had purchased, it was coming with me. The expensive kitchen appliances I had bought, mine. The decorations I had spent hours picking out, gone. And of course, I took the coffee maker, the very one Jeremy loved, the one he couldn't start his mornings without. I worked quickly, making sure I didn't leave behind a single thing. That belonged to me. The apartment started to look emptier with every passing minute, transforming from a home into a hollow space. And then came the next step, taking back what was rightfully mine. Jeremy had been stealing from me for 2 years, making me believe that my money was going toward rent when, in reality, it was going straight into his and his mother's pockets. Well, today I was taking it all back. I grabbed my phone and headed straight to the bank. Our joint account was where my paycheck had been deposited every month. I had trusted him enough to let our finances intertwine, believing we were working toward a future together. That trust was gone now. I walked up to the bank teller, my heart pounding in my chest, but my face remained calm. I knew I had every right to do this. It was my money after all. "I'd like to withdraw everything from my account," I said smoothly. The teller typed a few things into the computer before looking up at me. "You mean the joint account?" I nodded. "Yes, every last cent." A few minutes later, the transaction was complete. I stared at the balance on the screen. 0. It felt like justice. With my money secured and my belongings packed, I drove straight to my new apartment, a cozy but beautiful space across town that I had rented under my own name. And the best part? The first month's rent had already been paid, with Jeremy's money. I unlocked the door, stepping inside and breathing in the fresh start that awaited me. No more lies, no more betrayal, just a life that belonged only to me. I had escaped, but I wasn't done yet, because Jeremy still had one final surprise waiting for him when he got home. When Jeremy came home that evening, expecting the usual, our apartment, his comfortable surroundings, he was met with something entirely different. He opened the door and stepped into an eerily quiet space. At first, the silence might have seemed normal, but as his eyes swept across the room, confusion started to take over. There was no couch. The TV was gone. The shelves were empty. The dining table had vanished. And even the dishes we used every day were nowhere to be seen. The apartment felt hollow, as if it had never truly been a home. The only thing left in the room was a single piece of paper, taped to the large window that overlooked the street below. Jeremy's gaze fell on the letter, his steps faltering as he walked toward it. He reached out and ripped it off the window with shaky hands. He unfolded the paper slowly, his eyes scanning each word with growing disbelief. The letter was short, direct, and piercing. Nothing like the empty promises he'd given me over the last 2 years. Dear Jeremy, hope you enjoy your apartment. Since you and your mother had such fun scamming me for 2 years, I figured it was time to return the favor. My new apartment's rent for January, paid for by you, and don't bother calling. You're blocked. Happy New Year, loser, Nancy. As he read the letter, the weight of its message sank in. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but there was no mistaking the truth. This was the final, irreversible consequence of his actions. The lies, the manipulation, the deceit, it had all led up to this moment. I had returned everything he and his mother had stolen from me, and I had made sure they couldn't take anything else. After I wrote the letter, I turned off my phone. The silence that followed was intentional. I didn't want him calling, texting, or trying to explain himself. I was done with him, done with the lies, and done with the manipulation. As I drove, away from the apartment, a sense of calm washed over me. My life was starting anew. The weight of his betrayal was lifting from my shoulders. My new home awaited me, and I was free from the chains that had bound me to the lies and deceit for so long. I didn't look back, and with every passing mile, I felt lighter. This was my life now, a life built on trust, honesty, and fairness. A life where I was no longer the fool, but the one in control. Jeremy would never forget what he had done to me, but he would also never be able to take anything from me again. 3 months had passed since I took control of my life and made sure Jeremy and his mother could no longer take anything from me. The divorce was finally finalized. I had reclaimed my dignity, my peace, and my future. Jeremy had been forced to pay back every penny he had stolen from me over the years. In the end, he was left with nothing but his shame and guilt. As for his mother, Lorrie, she had quickly decided to sell her unit and move to Florida. The very same apartment they had once convinced me was my home. Now, it was just another property they were willing to part with, likely to start fresh in a place far from the mess they had created. One afternoon, I ran into Lorrie at the grocery store. She looked different, older, tired, and worn down. It was almost as if the weight of everything she had done to me had finally taken its toll. She saw me before I could see her, and as I turned the corner near the dairy aisle, I found myself face to face with the woman who had been part of the scam that tore my life apart. Her eyes held a mixture of guilt and desperation as she approached. Me, Nancy, she said quietly, her voice trembling. Please, let me explain. I didn't need an explanation. I had already heard enough lies, enough excuses. There was no more room for them in my life. Explain what? I cut her off, my tone sharp. How you and your son stole from me? How you sat across from me at dinner while robbing me blind? The words stung, but they were the truth, and it felt good to say them aloud. Lorrie's face faltered. She swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. Jeremy's devastated. I didn't let her finish. The truth had already been laid bare, and there was no room left for sympathy. Funny how karma works, isn't it? I smiled, the words leaving my lips with an ironic sense of satisfaction. That night, Jeremy called me 27 times, 27 attempts to reach me, each one more desperate than the last. He left messages, pleading for me to pick up, to listen to him, but I never answered, not once. I had learned a valuable lesson during those months of betrayal and heartbreak. Scammers always get what they deserve, and I had made sure that both Jeremy and his mother got what was coming to them. Living well is often considered the best revenge. But as I looked back on everything, I realized that there was something even more satisfying, something more empowering. I was living well, yes, but I was doing it in a new apartment, a place I truly owned, a place I had earned, not just with my hard work, but with the money I had reclaimed from the very people who tried to steal everything from me. As I stood in my new home, looking out the window, I realized that this was the true victory. Not only had I freed myself from the lies and deceit, but I had taken back everything that had been taken from me and more. In the end, I had built a new life for myself, one where I was no longer a victim, but a woman who had learned to stand strong, fight back, and win.